السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد سيد الأولين والآخرين وحبيب رب العالمين. I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to grant us all the sincere intentions. Insha'Allah, we will continue from where we left off last time, Insha'Allah. So, this is not where we left off last time. In the previous session, there was a cut in the recording at the end, if you remember. So let us pick up from where we left off. So if I just move to that area, here we are. So we were speaking about ar-ridda. So what is ar-ridda? Ar-ridda, it refers to cutting one's Islam, meaning if one was a Muslim and then they stopped being a Muslim, then that we call ridda. In English, that's known as apostasy. Okay? So there are special or specific rules that apply when ridda occurs, when a Muslim leaves when a person is a Muslim and then leaves al-Islam. Let's discuss that, inshallah. So, قال المؤلف رحمه الله والردة ثلاثة أقسام. Apostasy is of three types. كما قسمها النووي وغيره. Just as was categorized by An-Nawawi and others. Al-Hafiz An-Nawawi Al-Shafi'i, he said that ar-ridda is split up into three types. And other than him also said that among min Shafi'iyah, among the Shafi'i scholars, wa Hanafiyah, the Hanafi scholars, wa ghayrihim, and other than them also. They said that they are i'tiqadatun wa af'alun wa aqwalun. They said that they are beliefs, i.e., there are beliefs that turn a person into a non-Muslim. Wa af'al, there are actions that if a person commits, a person becomes a non-Muslim after having been a Muslim. Wa aqwal, and sayings, there are things that a person may say that makes them a non-Muslim after having been a Muslim. وَكُلٌّ يَتَشَعَّبُ شُعَبًا كَثِيرًا. And all of these types, the blasphemous beliefs, actions and sayings, all of them split up or branch off into many branches. Okay? But the core of the matter returns back to these three. Just give me a moment. Okay. الشرح, Sheikh Abdullah rahimahullah, the author, said, الشرح الردة هي قطع الإسلام. It is for a person's Islam to be cut. Apostasy, it is the cutting of one's al-Islam. Meaning, the termination of one's Islam, the termination of one being a Muslim. Down below, if we have a look, كما قال النووي في المنهاج. An-Nawawi said in his book Al-Minhaj the exact same thing, that a ridda means for a person to cut off their Islam, for their Islam to be cut off, such that they are no longer a Muslim. Just to clarify, if a person commits a sin that reaches the level of blasphemy, then they become a non-Muslim. Now, there is a specific type of blasphemy, okay, which is called apostasy. Now, this is specific because it is the name given to the blasphemy committed by someone who was a Muslim. So when a person is a Muslim and then they commit blasphemy, that blasphemy is also called ridda. As for if a non-Muslim, a Christian for example, who is already a non-Muslim, if this non-Muslim commits an additional blasphemy, like if the Christian says, I am a Christian, meaning I'm not a Muslim, then this person has committed an additional blasphemy, and they therefore fall deeper into their blasphemy. We call such a person a kafir, we call such a person a blasphemer, but we do not say that they committed ridda, because ridda means to have first been a Muslim and then to have fallen out of Islam. And the Christian was not a Muslim. He was a Christian, and then when he committed an additional blasphemy, he is still a Christian, except that he's fallen deeper into his blasphemy. So I hope that the difference between kufr, i.e. blasphemy, and ridda, apostasy, is clear. If you want a summarized version, then apostasy is a specific, let's say, noah, or a type of blasphemy. Okay, so I hope that is clear. النووي said الردة هي قطع الإسلام. الردة, apostasy, means for one Islam to be cut. وتحصل تارة بالقول, and sometimes it happens by saying something. So a person who was a Muslim says something, and because of that they become a kafir. وتارة بالفعل وتارة بالاعتقاد, and sometimes it occurs by a person who was a Muslim committing a certain action which renders them a non-Muslim. And sometimes it happens by somebody who was a Muslim believing something that causes them to fall out of al-Islam. كما نص على ذلك الشافعية والحنفية والمالكية والحنابلة. Just as, so falling out of al-Islam by saying something or doing something or believing something was explicitly mentioned, not alluded towards, or like some people might say, insinuated. No, rather explicitly mentioned by the Shafi'is, the Hanafis, the Malikis, and the Hanbalis. Let's go down to the bottom and see, like Ash-Shirbini in his book Al-Iqna'. This is a Shafi'i scholar, just like An-Nawawi was a Shafi'i scholar. The four schools, they are in agreement that a person may become a non-Muslim by saying, doing, or believing certain things. And we've already said that it's not a condition that a person wanted to leave al-Islam for them to actually fall out of it. In other words, a person may fall out of al-Islam and they didn't even want to. Okay? So it's important for a person to learn about the rules regarding kufr. So Ash-Shirbini, Ash-Shafi'i, in his book known as Al-Iqna', there you go, volume 2, page 205, he said, وَيَحْصُلُ قَطْعُهُ, and the termination of one's Islam, one's being a Muslim, happens بأمور, by matters. Like what? Like niyati kufrin, like intending to commit kufr, a person becomes a kafir. Or fi'lin mukaffir, or by committing a kufr action. Or qawli kufrin, or by saying something kufr. سواء أقاله استهزاء أم اعتقادا أم عنادا. سواء أقاله استهزاء أم اعتقادا أم عنادا. And this is a person, if they say a kufr statement, then they become a kafir, whether they said that statement belittlingly, out of belittlement, or out of believing it, or they said it inadan, meaning arrogantly. They said it like, for example, we say that wine, drinking the intoxicating wine, is haram. So if somebody said, no, it's not haram, because they were angry or they disagreed, they believe it's not haram, even though they know what the Muslims say about it, then this is inad. Then this person becomes a kafir in all these situations. End quote. Can we make sure that everybody has their mics off, please? Thank you very much. One second. Okay. Now other Shafi'i scholars, look. وقال الدمياطي في إعانة الطالبين. The scholar الدمياطي was a Shafi'i scholar. He said in his book إعانة الطالبين, there you have the reference, volume 4, page 202. وحاصل الكلام على أقسام الردة, and like it's a summary about the different categories of apostasy, أنها تنحصر في ثلاثة, that they can be say confined in three. اعتقادات نعم اعتقادات وأفعال وأقوال, that there are kufur beliefs, kufur actions, and kufur sayings. انتهى. Then with the Hanafis also, كما ذكر ابن عابدين في رد المحتار على الدر المختار في باب المرتد. Just as Ibn Abidin mentioned that kufr is three types, or rather even apostasy is three types. He mentioned this in his book رد المحتار على الدر المختار, and there you have a reference, volume 4, page 221. And this is a later scholar. He's a quite recent scholar. But also now, remember that the Hanafis originally, they were the scholars that authored about the kufr sayings. They compiled in their times, respectively, in their times, in their eras, the different eras, as the clock ticked along, let's say, as the years passed by and centuries went along, they authored in the sayings of kufr that they found at their times. They said such and such, to say it is kufr because it means such and such, and such and such. And like this, they listed things. So the Shafi'is copied from them, because they agreed, of course. The Shafi'is copied from them. So it's not something new. Then you have here the Maliki school. كما ذكر الدسوقي في حاشيته على الشرح الكبير, volume 4, page 301. Yeah. And then you have the Hanbali school, كما ذكر البهوتي في شرح منتهى الإرادات, volume 3, page 386. So the four schools They are in agreement about this. They're in agreement that there are 3 types of kufr. وقد استدلوا على هذا التقسيم بالقرآن الكريم. And they used as a proof of this classification into 3 types the Qur'an, the Honorable Qur'an. كقوله تعالى يحلفون بالله ما قالوا ولقد قالوا كلمة الكفر وكفروا بعد إسلامهم فإن هذه الآية يفهم منها أن الكفر منه قولي. This ayah of the Quran in Surah At-Tawbah, ayah 74, in it Allah revealed that there were some people that had committed kufr. And they were swearing by Allah that they did not this. They were saying, Wallahi, no, by Allah, we didn't say those words. يحلفون بالله. They were doing al-halif, swearing by Allah. By Allah, Wallahi, we did not say those words. يحلفون بالله ما قالوا. They were saying that we did not say. Allah revealed, وَلَقَدْ قَالُوا. But indeed, they said what? كلمة الكفر. They said a kufr statement or kufr statements. And what was the result? وَكَفَرُوا. And they became non-Muslims. بَعْدَ إِسْلَامِهِمْ. See, these were people that were saying, no, we didn't say those words. We didn't say those words, because they recognized that those words are blasphemy. So this is proof from the Quran itself, from Surah At-Tawbah, that there is a type of kufr that involves sayings. It is understood from this ayah that there is a blasphemy that is verbal. So the kufr sayings, they are understood from this ayah, that there are kufr sayings. وَقَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى, and what Allah revealed, إنما المؤمنون الذين آمنوا بالله ورسوله ثم لم يرتابوا. Surah Al-Hujurat, ayah 15. Meaning, indeed, the believers are only those who believe in Allah, number 1, and believe in the Messenger, alayhi salatu wassalam, number 2, they believe in his Messenger. And the number 3, ثُمَّ لَمْ يَرْتَابُوا, and then they do not doubt about it. I.e., أي لم يشكوا, i.e., they did not doubt. They believed in Allah, آمنوا بالله ورسوله, and his Messenger, then they did not doubt about it. ويفهم منه أن الكفر منه اعتقادي لأن الارتياب أي الشك يكون بالقلب. And it's understood from this ayah that there is a kufr which is in belief, because doubt exists in the heart. It's as though it's being said, indeed, the believers are only the ones that believe in Allah and the Messenger. And the one that doubts, however, is not a believer. So doubt about the authenticity of Islam, about the existence of Allah, doubt about the truthfulness of the Messenger, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, makes a person a non-Muslim. And is this a saying? A person might not say that literally, verbally, they might not say it. They can't really act that out. So it's in the heart. So it's a kufr belief, a conviction, a doubt. And this is kufr. This makes a person a non-Muslim. So there you have it, from the Quran itself. You have the proof that there are kufr beliefs. وَقَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى, and from the saying of Allah, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ اللَّيْلُ وَالنَّهَارُ وَالشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرُ. لا تسجدوا للشمس ولا للقمر واسجدوا لله الذي خلقهن إن كنتم إياه تعبدون. Allah revealed, among the great signs of the power of Allah are the night and the day and the sun and the moon. Do not prostrate to the sun. Do not prostrate neither to the sun nor to the moon, and rather prostrate to Allah, the one that created them, the one that created the night and the day and the sun and the moon. Prostrate to Allah who created them if you are truly worshippers of Allah. Meaning, if you prostrate to Allah, then that is worshipping Allah. As for if you prostrate to one of these things, then that action, it means worship. So if you worship the sun, then this is a kufr action, then you are a kafir. So from this verse, it is understood that there are kufr actions. Allahu Akbar. From the Qur'an itself, Amantu billah, MashaAllah. Look at that. It's actually in the Qur'an. And then the scholars, they extrapolated, they branched off and gave examples and set rules. Understood from the Qur'an, of course. Ya Allah. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. يفهم منه أن الكفر منه فعلي. It's understood that there is a kufr that is by actions. وهذا التقسيم, and this classification, categorization, اتفق عليه علماء المذاهب الأربعة بل هو مجمع عليه. This classification was agreed upon by the scholars of the four schools. Rather, it is by consensus. It is by consensus. The author said, وليعلم أن من الاعتقادات ما إذا طرأ للإنسان يخرجه من الإسلام. Let it be known that there are beliefs that if they occur from a person, if he believes them, they evict him from الإسلام. فمن هذه الاعتقادات, and from among these beliefs, اعتقاد أن العالم أزلي بنوعه وتركيبه أو بنوعه فقط. Among these blasphemous beliefs are to believe that the universe, the skies and the stars and the sun and the moon and so on, that they do not have a beginning. So here there are two cases. Both of them are blasphemy. One is for a person to believe that the universe is eternal without a beginning by both its elements and its kind. To say like the idea or the kind of the universe is without a beginning. Because that's kufr. Because that means that would entail that, falsely of course, that Allah didn't create it. So there's something that exists supposedly, right, among what we consider creation, that Allah didn't create. Okay? And this is blasphemy. Because Allah revealed, Allahu khaliqu kulli shay. Allah is the creator of everything. So some blasphemers, they believed, philosophers, they believed that the universe, by both its kind and its elements and the things in it, like the stars and the sun and the moon and other things like that, okay, some of the even said the arsh. Some of the supposed Islamic philosophers, like Ibn Taymiyyah, who was who carried a belief such as this, he was of course not a Muslim then, because he believed that before the arsh there was another arsh, and before that arsh there was another arsh, and before that arsh there was another arsh, and like this without a beginning, meaning insinuating that the arsh is not in need of Allah because it doesn't have a beginning supposedly. We know that everything other than Allah and His attributes, everything has a beginning. That's because Allah created it. The whole universe, the arsh and paradise, everything, paradise, hell, everything. And because it has a beginning, it shows us that it is in need of Allah. It couldn't have started to exist by itself because Allah created it, of course. And it could not have been existing forever without a beginning, because that would mean that it is not in need of Allah, or that Allah didn't create it. Okay, there is nothing independent outside the control of Allah. To say that the universe existed without a beginning, that it was always there, this is saying that it is outside the control of Allah, that it's outside the dominion of Allah, that it's not in need of Allah. This is blasphemy. Some of the philosophers said that. Some of the so-called Islamic philosophers, they said that too. And because of this, they are kuffar. They are heretics. They are renegades. If they were ever Muslims, then by saying that, they left al-Islam. Like Ibn Taymiyyah, because of what is strongly evident from his books. And some of these philosophers, they believed that the universe, it is eternal without a beginning, only by kind and not by elements. Both of these are kufr. What is the be all and the end all? The universe with its sun, moon, stars, planets, the skies, the arsh, al-kursi, al-lawh al-mahfuz, sidratul muntaha. All of these things are inside the universe and they have a beginning. The concept of place, the concept of time, the concept of colors, sounds, mobility, dimensions, and textures, emotions, and so on and so forth. All of this was created by Allah. And so it has a beginning. And so it shows that it is in need of Allah because it needed Allah to initiate it. to create it. Therefore, it is in need. Like us, we are slaves of Allah. Allah owns us, just as Allah owns every grain of sand in the desert and every piece of darkness in the night sky. Allah owns absolutely everything because He created absolutely everything. So to believe otherwise is kufr. Likewise, أو اعتقاد ما يوجب الحدوث في الله تعالى كاعتقاد أن مشيئته حادثة تحدث له. Or to believe in something that would necessitate that Allah has a created attribute. Okay? To believe something that would necessitate, in theory, that Allah has an attribute that began, that started, that was not, and then it started. The attributes of Allah are not like the attributes of the creation. Allah has always been attributed with His attributes, without a beginning, without a start, rather always without a beginning. Allah has existed without a beginning. So to insinuate that Allah has an attribute, which began and started to exist after it had not existed, then this is blasphemy. This is attributing weakness to Allah. By attributing weakness to an attribute of Allah, one is directly attributing weakness to the self of Allah, to Allah Himself. So to believe something that would necessitate that Allah is attributed with a created attribute, like to believe that the will of Allah begins and occurs and that it is bound by time. Like to believe, for example, for a person to believe that the will of Allah, which is, of course, we know eternal and without a beginning and without an end and so on, for someone to believe that if today there's an earthquake, for someone to believe that right at this second, okay, Allah decided, Allah willed right at this very second, meaning that it was not in the will of Allah before this. Okay, rather Allah did not know, supposedly, that this was going to happen. And then right now, at this very point in time, Allah decided that this is going to happen, and so it happened. This is attributing a start, a beginning to the will of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And therefore, this is attributing weakness to Allah and attributing weakness to Allah, and hence this is kufr. Rather, what we believe is that the will of Allah is without a beginning and without an end. Okay? Allah is not a human being. Allah is not something that calculates and deciphers and sits and plans and decides. No, the will of Allah is not bound by time. Okay? Like we will to do things. We want to do things. We decide. Okay? We confirm, we defer, we delay, we bring forward. We do this. We are bound by time. We change our minds. The will of Allah is without a beginning and without an end. So if someone believed that things occur to Allah, and then because of them He wills certain things to happen, now, in the now, that He hadn't willed before, He hadn't willed eternally, then this is blasphemy. Okay, so that's among the kufr beliefs. Also among the kufr beliefs. أو أنه تحدث له مشيئة شيء بعد أن لم يكن شائيا له. Or for someone to believe that his will occurs after he had not been willing, or he had not willed for it to happen. Okay, another example. أو أن علمه حادث. Or to believe that Allah learns new things, such that, for example, to say that he didn't have knowledge of something and then his knowledge increased. This is attributing change to Allah. We're not allowed to attribute change to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Change is another concept. Okay, like we had mentioned in the past, even in this session, that there are many concepts that are considered to be, there are concepts that are created, things that are created, bodies and their attributes. Change is something that Allah created within the creation. Look how people are young. They are small, okay, in the womb of the mother, then they come out, then they take their first step, then they walk, then they run, then they become a lot older, and then they revert back in one sense. They get slower, they change. Okay, plants also change. The seed is planted, it germinates, some flowers may grow on it, okay, it attains a strong stem, fruits grow on it, eventually it dies. It changes. People change, hearts change, the weather changes, right? Allah created change. Change is an amazing creation. And you can see it in so many creations. To say, now to take this concept of change and attribute it to Allah is insulting Allah, tabaraka wa ta'ala. Change, Allah is the one that manages the creation, manages change within the creation at different levels. Allah regulates that change, tabaraka wa ta'ala, according to his eternal will, power, and knowledge. Allah has eternally destined what will happen, when, where, and how. To attribute this change that is exclusively for the creation, man, jinn, angel, animal, or inanimate object, it is exclusive to the creation. To attribute it to Allah is insulting Allah. So to say here that Allah, his knowledge increases, i.e., changes, i.e., it was a certain level and then it's +1 now. That's change, isn't it? That's kufr, blasphemy. Tabarakallah. Tanazzah Allah wa taqaddas Allah. So we don't say Allah learned something new, or that he is now more knowledgeable than yesterday. No, we don't. No, we say Allah alim wa alim. Allah is attributed with knowledge, a perfect, eternal, and everlasting knowledge, without a beginning and without an end. And he knows with his knowledge all things. Okay? Full stop, if you will. That's it. Okay? He doesn't forget. He doesn't learn anything new. He knows. He just knows everything. It says among the kufr beliefs also is أو أنه يحدث له علم شيء بعد أن لم يكن عالما به. And it's kufr also to say that knowledge occurs, happens to Allah. Like he gains the knowledge of something after having not known about it, not, after having not been knowledgeable about it. Why is this kufr? لأن حدوث صفة في الله يستلزم حدوث ذاته والحدوث أو الحدوث ينافي الألوهية. This is because for an attribute to occur, meaning for it to start, for it to begin. Okay, to attribute that to Allah, to attribute to Allah an attribute which began, which occurred, okay, which started, this would necessitate that the self of Allah is also weak and that it also began at one point, or it started, or it occurred. You know, in theology, in Aqidah, we call something that that occurs, meaning that starts, an event. So to attribute an event to Allah, to attribute to Allah that He has gained an attribute, attained an attribute, this is occurrence. This is like saying Allah is created. Because the creations, they start to exist because Allah created them. So to say Allah gained an attribute, it's like saying Allah is created. Okay. Wal huduth, and occurrence, starting, beginning, having a beginning, yunafil uluhiyya. This contradicts godhood. Al-Imam Abu Hanifa, he said in his book Al-Fiqh al-Akbar, وصفاته في الأزل غير محدثة ولا مخلوقة. And the attributes of Allah eternally existed. They did not occur like, oh, they didn't exist and now suddenly Allah has a new attribute. Like suddenly, قد يقال يعني, suddenly Allah now He is knowledgeable and He wasn't knowledgeable and He gained an attribute. No, occurrence only exists in creation. That's because Allah wills for things to occur, to start. He makes them start. He is the originator, tabaraka wa ta'ala. He makes things start. هو الباري تعالى, البارئ. And the attributes of Allah are not makhluqa, Abu Hanifa said. They don't have beginnings. They've always existed. فَمَنْ قَالَ إِنَّهَا مَخْلُوقَةٌ, whoever says the attributes of Allah are created, or muhdatha, or that they have beginnings, i.e. that they are events and occurrences, or waqafa, or a person says, look, I'm not going into it. I'm not saying they are created or they're not created. I'm not saying that they have a beginning or they don't have a beginning, right? Meaning he doesn't know. أو شك فيها, or he doubts. He says, I really don't know. He says, does Allah have a beginning or not? Do His attributes have beginnings or not? Did they like start and they didn't used to be and now He has more, or I don't know. فهو كافر بالله تعالى. Abu Hanifa said this person is a kafir. This person has blasphemed against Allah Ta'ala. Okay. Okay, likewise, amongst the kufr beliefs. وكذلك اعتقاد اللون في الله تعالى. Likewise, to believe that Allah is a color. This is kufr. Why? Color is an attribute of a body that Allah created for creation. Color, taste, size, mass, dimensions, weight, and so on. Allah created these for creation. So to believe Allah is a color, whether white or shiny, okay, something illuminated, or something dark, or something blue, something mysterious, and turquoise. Believing Allah is attributed with a color, it is kufr. Attributing to Allah being transparent or translucent, all this is kufr, because these are attributes of volumes, things that have a shape and size. Allah doesn't have a shape or a size. He created that for us, tabaraka wa ta'ala. Right. Then it says, وَكَذَلِكَ اعْتِقَادُ. So amongst the kufr beliefs also, it says, وَكَذَلِكَ اعْتِقَادُ الْحَرَكَةِ وَالسُّكُونِ فِي اللَّهِ تعالى. Likewise, to believe that Allah moves or that Allah is still. Again, matters that Allah created for creation, in creation, to be attributed to creation, to people, to the jinn, to angels, to animals, to inanimate objects. Rivers flow, stones, they topple down from the tops of mountains, right? The wind blows leaves from the east to the west. Okay, there are mountains that are stuck like pegs in their places. They are immobile. Okay, so being mobile, moving, and being still, these are attributed to the creation. They're not attributed to Allah. Tabaraka wa ta'ala. It says, لأنه لو كان ساكنا لكان له أمثال لا تحصى. It says it's not permissible to believe this about Allah, because had it been the case that someone claimed that, had it been the case that Allah was still, not moving, then he would have had many similars, many things that were similar to him, things that would, he would have countless similars, things that resemble him. And likewise, if he moved, then he would have many similars. He would have countless similars, so many things similar. وهذا ينافي قوله تعالى ليس كمثله شيء. And this, for Allah to supposedly move or be still and have lots of similars, things like him, goes against the saying of Allah, that Allah is absolutely nothing like the creation. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Ajib. Okay. سورة الشورى. وليعلم أيضا أن من الأفعال ما يخرج الإنسان من الإسلام، ومن ذلك إلقاء المصحف في القاذورات والسجود لصنم، وهو ما يعبده الكفار من حجر كان أو من حديد أو ذهب أو فضة أو نحو ذلك. The Shaykh said, then let it be known that there are also actions that evict a person from al-Islam. And among those are to throw the book of the Qur'an, the Mus'haf, in the bin, in the trash. That's one example. So if they knowingly did that, knowing that this is the Qur'an, if they threw it in the bin, then this is belittling, so it is kufr. Likewise, if they prostrated to an idol, they did sajda to an idol, this is kufr. What is a sonam? A sonam, or an idol, it is what the kuffar, the non-Muslims, worship, which is made of stone or metal or gold or silver or what is similar to that. فَالسُّجُودُ لَهُ كُفْرٌ. So prostrating to an idol is kufr. وَلَوْ كَانَ الشَّخْصُ مَازِحًا, even if a person was joking. وَكَذَلِكَ الشَّمْسُ مَنْ سَجَدَ لَهَا يَكْفُرُ وَكَذَلِكَ الْقَمَرُ. Likewise, the sun, whoever prostrates to it commits kufr. Remember, if a person was a Muslim and they prostrated to the sun, intending to prostrate to the sun, then they become a non-Muslim. If a non-Muslim, already a non-Muslim, prostrated to the sun, then this non-Muslim falls deeper into their kufr. Another kufr is written upon them, another blasphemy is written upon them. Likewise, the moon. وَكَذَلِكَ يَكْفُرُ مَنْ سَجَدَ لِإِنسَانٍ عَلَى وَجْهِ الْعِبَادَةِ لَهُ. Likewise blasphemes the one who prostrates to a human with the intention of worshipping that human. With the intention of worshipping that human. MashaAllah. Okay, we won't read this right now. ومن الأفعال الكفرية, and from the kufr actions أيضا also is what? كتابة القرآن بالبول. Writing the Qur'an with urine is kufr. والدوس عمدا على الكتب الشرعية مع العلم بأنها كتب الشرع. To step on purpose on Islamic books, whilst a person knew that they are Islamic books. وأما الأقوال التي تخرج صاحبها من الإسلام فهي أكثر وأكثر، كما يدل على ذلك قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم: أكثر خطايا ابن آدم من لسانه. ورواه الطبراني بإسناد صحيح من حديث عبد الله بن مسعود. And as for sayings that evict their sayer from al-Islam, then there are many. There are more, sorry. There are many more, let's say. Just as the saying of the Prophet ﷺ indicates that most of the mistakes, most of the sins of the son of Adam, of mankind in general, are committed by the tongue. Narrated by Al-Tabarani with a strong chain from the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. وكل قسم من هؤلاء الثلاثة يخرج من الإسلام بمفرده من غير أن ينضم إليه قسم آخر، أي أن الأقوال الكفرية تخرج من الإسلام من دون أن يقترن بها اعتقاد أو فعل. هذا ما اتفق عليه العلماء وأجمعوا عليه، فلا التفات إلى ما خالف ذلك. And every one of these categories among the three kufr sayings, actions and beliefs evict a person from al-Islam by themselves. So if a person says, for example, a kufr statement, then just by that, they become a non-Muslim. Okay? Even if it was not joined with another category. So if a person merely, for example, wrote the Qur'an with urine, knowing that it was urine, and so on, then this person would become a kafir even if they didn't say anything, because they acted, right? This is a kufr action. So even if they didn't say anything, then still they become a kafir, just by doing this one thing by itself. Meaning that the kufr sayings make a person leave al-Islam, even if no belief or action is connected to it. This is what is agreed upon by the scholars. There is a consensus upon this. فلا التفات إلى ما خالف ذلك. So we do not pay any attention to what contradicts what we have mentioned. قال المؤلف رحمه الله. The author رحمه الله said, فمن الأول الشك في الله أو في رسوله أو القرآن أو اليوم الآخر أو الجنة أو النار أو الثواب أو العقاب أو نحو ذلك مما هو مجمع عليه، أو اعتقاد قدم العالم وأزليته بجنسه وتركيبه أو بجنسه فقط، أو نفي صفة من صفات الله الواجبة له إجماعا ككونه عالما. To summarize, and among the first category, which is the kufr beliefs, to doubt about the existence of Allah, or the truthfulness of His Messenger, or the Qur'an, or the truthfulness of the occurrence of the Day of Judgment, or to doubt about the truthfulness of the existence of paradise or of hell, or the fact that we are rewarded and we will receive the result of that, and to doubt about being punished, i.e., that sins exist and so on and so forth, and what is similar to that. Among what is known by consensus, among what there is a consensus of the scholars upon, a concurrence of all of the scholars. Or if a person, now more kufr beliefs, if a person believed, as we said, that the universe is eternal, without a beginning, both by its kind and its elements, or just by its kind, both are kufr. Or to negate one of the attributes of Allah Ta'ala that by consensus, by the agreement of all, by the concurrence of all the scholars, he is attributed with, like being, like having knowledge, like being attributed with knowledge. To negate, to deny that attribute is kufr. So inshallah we will stop here. MashaAllah. Barakallahu fikum. Does anybody have a question about what we went through today? About anything that I mentioned today? Okay. بارك الله فيكم. Let's stop here. نقول لا إله إلا الله والصلاة على النبي. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. رب اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات. رب اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات. رب اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات. Let me just stop the recording for a second.